memory of her father, Eliyahu ben Yosef Kohen, those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Estemalka, Bat Meshlom Yisachar. Month of Learning by Malki and Rabbi Dr. Yankee Honig, in memory of her father, Yosef ben Yecheskel Yehuda, Marsha Federbush, in memory of her husband, Uriel Pinchas ben Arav Shimon, Gary and Marsha Schrager, in memory of his parents, Freda Bat Hendel and David ben Yosef, Andrea and David Dolmy, in memory of her father, Tzvi Herschel Hillel ben Abraham. A week of learning by Marsha Federbush, in memory of her mother, Chaya Elka Bat Moshe Akiva, Shelley and Oscar Moll, in memory of her father, Shlomo Reuben ben Binyamin, Tzipora Goldstein, in memory of her husband, Yehuda ben Moshe Shmuel, Barbara Stern, in memory of her mother, Rachel Bat Yosef Shmuel. As far as I know, there are no days of learning for today. Yesterday was the 16th, right? So may the Shemras have an aliyah, Craig Rafi about the Yeshiva Shem Matzliah, and the Chol B'nai Israel good Kabenshtian. Okay, morning, Bob. Okay. Amen. Okay, we are on Dalet Amud Aleph. Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
Okay, about 6 lines from the top. Right? Okay.
Lower than that.
No, I don't know. That's where we stop.
That's what you finished.
That's where we stop. So that's 6 lines from the top.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So I want us to realize that the Gemara is really, we stopped there, but the Gemara is still picking up on some of these same issues that we saw previously. Okay. And there, when we're talking about that she goes free, the maid servant woman, this is an Amma Ivriya. And we're now going to go into some detail.
A little Jewish girl.
Okay. So what happens? We know that the father has the right to, I'm going to use the word indenture, okay, the young Jewish girl at a certain age, while she's certainly a Ketana even, okay, but let's hope she's a little more than a young Ketana. She's an older Ketana. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's, well, still a Ketana. And the purpose of this could be threefold. Number one option is that the person becoming the master for this young servant girl could marry her. Option number 2 is that he could be arranging for his son to marry her. And option number 3, if he doesn't use options 1 or 2, okay, he must then give her her freedom, okay, and go free.
When she's a naira.
When she reaches a certain point, right? So the Gemara has told us already, all right, and we saw there's going to be a kind of question. It says this freedom occurs when if he doesn't use option 1 or 2 to marry her or the son marry her, must let her go free, okay? When she becomes a na'ara, but the Gemara is also going to say, and also when she becomes a bogeret. So the Gemara is going to have a problem here. If already she becomes free when she's a na'ara, why do you even have to mention anything about being a bogeret? And the Gemara then is going to go into a situation and suggest to us there is ultimately a possibility that this young girl will not show signs of bagrut, okay, shortly after her 6-month period of being a na'ara, okay? And what happens then? At what point will we say she goes free? Perhaps what's going to happen is this young girl is really an Ilonit, okay? And at that point, we're going to have to say, are there signs that show she's an Ilonit? Or do we say, no, the halacha dictates that by age 20, if she still hasn't shown signs of puberty, then it's very clear. Then she's a vadai Ilonit, and he must give her her freedom then. Okay, so I'm giving you a preview of what the Gemara is going to jump into. So now we're ready to continue. So understanding that, the Gemara picks up Vahai v'yatzachinam, and here where they say she goes free, lahachi huda'ata. This is the reason that it comes. Hamabayle the kedatanya. Is it necessary really to come to tell us this is what it's teaching? Okay, in other words, this part of the pasuk, Tanya v'yatzachinam, because we already learned that it says that she goes free. Okay, elu yemei bagrut, that occurs certainly when she reaches her stage of physical maturity. Ein kasef, that's what the pasuk tells us. So if we can learn it from the pasuk, elu yemei bagrut ein kasef, why do we need another pasuk that says v'yatzachinam, right? Elu yemei na'arut. That must apply then. The v'yatzachinam must logically, by svara, imply that we're dealing about a girl reaching status of na'arut. Okay? So that's the point. Amar Ravina, says Ravina, im kain lemakra. If that's the case, why doesn't the pasuk tell us this way? Okay, in kesef, all right? So in that case, right? But notice I'm reading it in because there's no yud there. But we're going, right. But really the text is ein kesef.
With a yud.
With a yud. And so now we're going to have to deal with the question, how come we've got an example there where the yud is missing, right? My ein kesef. So why is it therefore that we understand the reading of the text as with a yud ein kesef?
You cannot make a drush.
And there's no yud there. The Gemara is going to suggest. What?
There is a yud there.
In the
word's
text.
it twice.
One with,
one's
one with, right? So what happens? Ein kesef la'adon zeh, aval yesh kesef la'adon acher. Okay, we make a drasha, and we say because of that, we can say that there is no money to one master, namely the owner of the amah, okay, of the young girl servant, but there is money that goes to someone else, namely the father, okay, in the situation of kiddushin. Okay, now what happens? Uman ninhu, okay, and who are we talking about? Av, we're talking about the father in this case. Umimai didarshin and hachi, and what's the necessity to make a drasha here? After all, can't we derive this clearly from our pasuk? The Tanya, because we have a braita that says v'zera ein la. We have another pasuk, a braita, that uses the pasuk, and there are no progeny there.
She has no progeny.
Okay, all right. In other words, the question dealing with regards to a bat kohen, can she go back because there's no progeny to eat truma in the house of her father if her husband dies or divorces her, right? That's the point, right? Ein li ela zara. There we're talking about zara. Zara minayin. Okay, there we're talking about her progeny. Okay, where we're talking about progeny in general, based on what?
Grandchildren.
Okay, we're going to see it in a second, right? So based on second, notice we didn't use the word children, we used the word progeny. In other words, that could be more than just one generation. For example, she could have had children, or right, those children could have died, and then but they had children. So she has grandchildren. That's still considered progeny from her, right? So what happens? Talmud Lomar, but our text teaches us zera aimla. She has no progeny. Iyen la. And therefore I use the yud to tell us we must examine the situation. Ve'en li ela zera kasher. I might have thought then this only refers to valid progeny. Zera pasul minayin. How do we know were she even to have progeny who are pasul? Okay, in this case, that still would count as progeny
From the truma.
for regards to the truma issue, right? Talmud Lomar, our text teaches us zera ein la iyen la, that when we says that she has no progeny, it means examine her. In other words, examine her situation.
To see if she had a grandchild.
Right? Vaha afikte lezera zara. But here we say that there could be a situation that her progeny produced progeny. Zera zara lo itztarich kra. If that's the case, I might even argue that I don't even need a pasuk, okay, in regards to this situation to tell me that if she has grandchildren, it's still considered her progeny in regards to the truma situation. Why? Because we have an understanding, says the Gemara, de b'nei banim harehi kibanim, that your grandchildren are like almost your children. Ki itztarich kra. So therefore, why do we need that pasuk? Lizera pasul, to tell us what about the situation if she has illegitimate children who are not considered basically ksherim. In other words, they don't have valid yichus, or they're not born appropriately. Okay, whatever situation. Okay, so now we go on. Vatana gufe. Okay, and another Tana teaches us himself. Migalia de Darish Hachi, what he reveals to us, this is how he darshans it. Amre, as we say, Kativ, as it's written, Man Bilam, okay, Uma'an Yibami.
The same missing yud.
Okay, so we now have an example where there's a reference to the text, okay, where we also see a phrase dealing with Bilam that he initially refuses to go along with the representatives that were sent by Balak. But that language is questionable, okay? All right, are we basing it on the word ma'an and its different flow between aleph and yud, ayin and aleph, and it refers to he refuses, okay, all right, or are we talking about something else? De lo kativ baho yud, because in both those examples, we also have situations where we read it in a certain way as if there is a yud present in the text, right? Although it's not written there. Vahacha katuv beyud. And in our case, we have that there is a yud. Shma mina v'drasha huda'ata. It comes to tell us that using this, in other words, if you use the word ayin instead of aleph there, it means nothing. I want nothing from you, could be his answer. So therefore, I can use this yud as a means of darshaning that it's me'ain refused. Right? V'itztarich l'michtav kiddushay le'aviha. And it's necessary for us clearly to spell out in the Lashon, using the text, using a pasuk, that this money for the kiddushin of this girl goes to her father. But it's also necessary to have a pasuk that defines for us that the usufruct of this girl, or her produce, also belongs to her father. Why, says the Gemara? Right? And by the way, Rashi then was the one who points out that Ma'an Bilam Ein B'da'ato Leilech Imanu. All right, that Rashi gives us that point about the question of the language. Right? In any case, so why do we need both? Why do we need two psukim? One to tell us that the father gets the Kedushin money, and one to tell us that the father earns the
work
the work, her work of her
She
hands,
can take her babysitting
right?
money.
Whatever. Right, probably from working as a seamstress or sewing or things like that. All right. The ikatav rachmana kiddusheha le'avia, because I'm going to read it word only such that we had a pasuk to support that the father receives the kiddushin money. Hava amina, I would have thought to say, mishum delo tarcha baho. Why? Because in that case, there's no effort put forward in its regard. Aval maaseh yadeha, but where her handwork is recognizing some effort, the katarcha baho, because she has to put effort into it. Ema dida havu, maybe that should belong to her. Ve'iyashma'inin maaseh yadeha, and had I only learned that we're talking about a pasuk that supports the fact that her handiwork goes to the father. Deka matzane mina. Why? Because we could say in this case that for exchange of her handiwork, that's the reason that he supports her and feeds her, clothes her, etc. Right? Aval kiddusha, okay, but the kiddushin money, the me'alma ka'ati, that doesn't come as part of an exchange, but it just just in general comes to him from anywhere.
But more than that, he no longer has to support her. So
right? Well, that's true too. Ka'atila, maybe that should come to her. Emadida havu, and I would say maybe that should go to her. Sricha, and that's why we need both psukim to tell us that the father gets kedushin and the father gets maseh yadah. Okay, right? So one pasuk, okay, ein kasef, right? That tells us one thing. The other tells us something else.
So if she gets a bonus, it still goes to her father.
All right. If she gets a bonus,
it goes to her.
oh, and you mean for her maaseh yadeha, then that would still go to the father, right? Okay. Gufa. Let's come back now to our text. Okay. So we up to this point, we understand that both kesef kedushin and maaseh yadeha go to her father. Okay. However, the Gemara is not satisfied until she's reaches a point, okay, where she is on right. Okay. So what happens? Gufa. Let's come back to what we saw in the text previously. V'yatzachinam, where the pasuk said she goes without money. Elu yemei bagrut. That seems to imply when she reaches physical maturity. Ein kasef. The fact that the pasuk then says there's no money. Elu yemei na'arut. That tells us, okay, that there is no money once she reaches the age of na'arut, between 12 and 12 and a half. So the Gemara has a problem with this. V'lichtov rachmana na'arut, v'lo bai bagrut. Let the Torah simply write the phrase na'arut, and we don't need a statement about bagrut, because we could have learned it from Kal V'chomer. If she can get free and becomes independent, so to speak, at na'arut, how much more so?
She doesn't get any money.
Okay, how much more so when it would be from when she reaches bagrut? We don't need it. Amar Rava. So Rava says, what's the situation here? Ba zeh v'limeid al zeh. That one comes to teach us about the other. Midei dahava atosha v'sachir. I can give you a parallel of something similar where we have both two phrases, and the two phrases are somewhat similar but somewhat different. And I could have thought to learn it from one on a Kal V'chomer on the other, but nevertheless, the Torah cites both examples. Okay, what is he going to tell us? Says the part, right? He says, why? Because we have a bright that gives us an example that regards to a kemidi to have atoshav v'sachir, on somebody who is, I'm going to use toshav as a temporary resident, and sachir as somebody who is paid worker. Okay,
So
in a
Shav is
second.
the guy who gets
Well, we'll
nailed.
get it. Wait, hold on. Okay, we'll get to that. Okay, the Tanya, as we're taught now in a bright toshav. When we use the term toshav, what are we saying? Ze kanui kinyan olam. That isn't really an individual because we call him a toshav, an inhabitant of the land. It means he has an extended period of
He
time.
turned slaves to a
Yes,
Kohen,
yes.
an
Not
inhabitant
dafka
of
to a
the land.
Kohen. Not dafka to a Kohen. Okay? All right? Somebody who has an extended period of time
We're talking about
up to
We're
Yovel.
talking about eating truma.
I disagree.
Okay.
That's not the pshat there.
Okay.
Okay? Sachir, when we have Sachir, Zek Kanui Kinyan Shanim. That is the individual that is only acquired up for a certain number of years. And then when the Yovel comes, the person, okay, or Shemitah comes, the person goes free. All right? Yomar Toshab, V'lo Yomar Sachir. If that's the case, why does the text say Toshav? And it shouldn't have to say Sachir. Va'ani omer kanui kinyan olam eino ochel. And I might say here in this case, okay, now that we're talking about what is it that he,
Look at the Rashi. Midei Dahavet Atashuv Sachir.
yeah,
We're talking about
Midei
eating truma.
Tichtiv Gabi Truma Lemidrash. So that's Rashi's explanation. Okay,
That's the only way.
all right, okay. So what happens here? Okay, Kanui Kinyan Olam Eino Ochel. Kanui Kinyan Shanim Lo Kol Shekin. If the person then, in regards to Truma, in that situation, why? Because what is the issue? The individual is not Kinyan Kaspo of the Kohen. That's how Rashi derives it based on Truma.
Right.
Okay, that's the point that we've got to get to. Okay, because one is not the actual possession of the Kohen. He's only, if you will,
An
a
indentured
temporary
servant.
possession. One is temporary up to a certain, based on a certain number of years. One is longer term,
But it also
but he's
terminates
also
by Yovel.
terminates at a certain time. So he's not Kinyan Kaspo. So that's where Rashi gets us to, directing us to look at the Truma situation. Okay? That's why I said I don't like to necessarily jump ahead. Okay, Elokain, Ha'iti Omer. If that's the case, I would have said as follows. Toshav Zekanui Kinyan Shanim. That maybe he is purchased for only a certain number of years. Aval Kanui Kinyan Olam. I might have thought then that one that is acquired for a longer period of time, okay, he should be able to eat, right? Bas Sachir V'limeid al Toshav. And so he says, therefore, the one phrase comes to teach us in regard to the other phrase, Sha'af al pi, Shekanui Kinyan Olam, that even though he is a longer term indentured servant, nevertheless, he's not Kinyan Kaspo of the Kohen, and therefore, Eino Ochel, he does not eat. Okay? Now, let's go on. Amarle Abai. So Abai is bothered by this explanation. Okay? Midami, are they really comparable? Your use of Sachir Toshav compared to Na'arut and Bogrut, are they really parallel? He asks. Hatam, in that case, okay, Tre Gufeininu. You're talking about, in essence, two different people. Okay? Dechinami Katav Rachmana Toshav, because there clearly the Torah talks about Toshav. Nirtza lo yochal, is not being able to eat. V'hadar katav idach, and then he writes about the other. Hava sachir milta da'ache b'kav v'chomer. That one is again another kind of servant, and with this thing also we could learn it based on a kal v'chomer. But what happens? Umilta da'ache b'kav v'chomer, And there are times when something which ordinarily we could have learned on the basis of a kal v'chomer, tarach v'katav lakra. Nevertheless, the Torah does, I'm going to say, spell it out and write it in and tell it us directly. Okay? Elahach, says Abaye. Again, but in our case of the girl, chad gufahi, it's only one person we're talking about. Kinafka la bena'arut. Why? Because she goes out when she reaches a stage of na'arut. Bagrut, my bai gabe. When we regards to her reaching a later stage in her physical development, what's the reason to have to bring it up even? Ela amar Abai. Rather, says Abai, lo nitzracha ela lebagarda ailanut. Right? No, what we're talking about is a situation where this girl, I'm going to say, skips for some reason the normal signs of puberty, and we don't know, okay, at this point. All right? Salka da'atach amina. It's possible we might have thought Na'arut tipuk, that she would reach the stage of Na'arut and go out. Bagrut lo tipuk, and that because she doesn't show signs of puberty, no, we're not, she's not getting independent, not going out. Okay? Only really until we would reach age 20 and clearly know at that point that she is incapable of birth, would we say at that point she could get free. Okay? Kamash Malan comes to teach us that's the key. Matkif Mar Bar Rav Ashi. So Mar Bar Rav Ashi challenges Velav Kal V'chomer. But it's not a Kal V'chomer situation. Namely, Uma Simanin She'ein Motzein Mirishut Ha'av, Motzein Mirishut Adam. Okay, whereas signs of puberty, okay, clearly will remove her, I'm going to use that language, from the mastership of her father.
No, fakert. She's still a
Motzi'in
naira,
Rishut
and she's
Ha'av.
still in her father's rishut.
Oh, I'm sorry,
even though she
She'ein,
has the-
right, She'ein Motzi'in Mirishutav, that it doesn't remove her from
but
the
it does from
mastership of her
force.
father, Motzi'in Mirishut Adon, but it does remove her from being a girl that's a servant situation. Okay? Benarut, I'm sorry, Bagrut, Shemotzi'ah Mirishut Ha'av, whereas signs of puberty, Bagrut, that does remove her from the domain of her father, Eino din shemotziah mireshut adon, should that not be logical based on a kal v'chomer, that it should remove her from the domain of the master? Ella, rather, Amam Mar Bar Rav Ashi, he says as follows: Lo nitzracha ella la'ikar savina da'ilani. No, we need this because of the question of that it may uproot the sale of a young woman who is potentially an island. Salka da'atka amina, because I might have thought to say, okay, what did we say were the purposes of selling a young girl into that
To
servitude?
get her married.
Either option one was to marry the master, option two was to marry the
this
son.
kid.
Okay, since two out of the three options were clearly for marriage, and we understand part of the ikar of marriage is to produce progeny. Okay, therefore, in this situation, that's our problem, right? 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 The sale of that girl would be problematic, right? The acha simanei narud haves vinai. That would be a valid sale. The lo acha simanei narud, where there would not be proper signs of narud, lo haves vina, that it would not, lo haves vina is vina, it would not be a valid sale. Kamash Malan. But nevertheless, we would say that in that case, since we don't know right? We don't know if this girl is really an Ilonit. Maybe she's
We
a
could
late
know.
bloomer.
We could know. if
That's
she's
the
11
question.
and a
That's
half.
the question. Yatsa, whether there are certain simanim, that's part of the issue. All right, between at a certain age, right?
Basically, Shtei Cyrus is
We understand
Naira
that,
and
but
Res
somebody,
Sarah
but yes, but still there
Already,
could be a late
Soteris.
bloomer. Okay, you have
That's
that
why
with.
you give it till 20.
That's right. That's the point I'm making. Okay, you have
And
that with young men
Initiates
too.
until 35.
Okay. Wow. Anyway, so let's go on. We're on the top of the new Viatzachinam kuli. Okay, we come back to that pasuk. Okay, ulamar barav ashim, and according to him, the amar v'lav kal v'chomahu, who claims then that we do not base a kal v'chomer here. Ha-amrinan milta da'atya b'kal v'chomer. But here we say this is something that is capable of a kal v'chomer. Okay? In other words, if so, she can become an Amma, even if she's not a Bulgarian. Okay? So what happens? Tarach v'katav lakra. That here, there was an effort made, and it's written in the pasuk. Hani mili hecha deleka l'shinuye. Okay, here it's clear where there is no, we want to say changes. Okay? We don't know what the explanation, the commentary, the answer is. Aval hecha de'iga l'shinuye mishminan. But where we can teach it, learn it, that's what we do. So the Ilonit certainly may become an Amma. Okay, going on. Vitana. And we've learned also the following. Maite la mehach, that you could bring it from here. The Tanya, as we learn a Braita from with another pasuk. Excuse me. Ki kach ish isha uba'ala. Okay, based on this pasuk, that a man takes a woman and has relations. V'haya im lo timtzachen be'einav, and it happens, says the pasuk, that if she doesn't find favor in his eyes, okay, kimatza ba v'gomer. Remember that Perez says ervat davar, okay, was the rest of the pasuk, and we saw there was a machloket Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. So based on that pasuk, we said ein kicha ela b'kesef, that there is no, I'm going to use acquisition here for kicha, except with money. V'chein hu omer. Why? Because we also have another pasuk that tells us as follows: V'natati kesef hasadeh kach mimeni. Okay, when we saw that with the sale of the land, okay, from Ephraim. V'halo dinhu, and here we certainly do have a kal v'chomer, okay, that we could use. Ma'ama ha'ivriya she'ena nikneit b'biyah. Namely, the same way a Hebrew woman's young girl servant is not acquired through relations, nikneit b'kesef, but is acquired through financial, monetary means. Zo shenikneit b'biyah, one who is capable of being acquired through biyah, no din shetikna b'kasef. Is it not logical then that she should be also be able to be acquired by money? Okay, so if kicha applies kinyan kesef, okay, I should be able to use a kal v'chomer here, okay, to clarify this. If it's true with the Amma, can't I learn it then in regards to a regular woman? Okay, Yevama tochir, but Yevama becomes proof to tell us this kal v'chomer doesn't work. Why? Shenikneit b'biyah, where because the Yevama is acquired
only
through biyah, particularly, ve'ena nikneit b'kasef, but she is not able to be acquired through money, the Yabama. There's only one way there. Right? What?
Star. Wouldn't she get a star after beer?
No.
By even.
No, the
Not
only
necessarily.
shtar for is if one brother wants to cut the others out. He can give her a shtar that he's gonna.
Okay, okay, remember we learned that a brother could do a ma'amar. That was Durabanan, all right?
That's all there is.
Okay,
So in other words, if he says mine with her, it's like her super.
no,
Her
not like
kasuba
a
from her
kasuba.
dead husband is still applicable.
The mama would be, I'm, as if he's saying, I'm picking up on the kasuba of your dead husband and carrying through on that marriage.
So in other words, that's a super based on the.
Right.
The kasuba from hubby one
Right.
is
That's
still
what,
applicable.
that's the advan, that's the Rabbanan. That's why the Mamar, because he's made, if you will, a verbal commitment to follow through on a document.
But
That's
also
the case.
to cut his brothers out. That's the
Well,
basic
that's true,
reason
too.
for the mind.
That's true.
That I don't want my
Well, the
brother
same
to
way,
jump.
same way a kedushin cuts her out for everybody else. The mamar, the
Well, no,
rabbanan,
because all right,
cuts the brothers out.
go ahead.
That's the parent.
That's between you and him. I just want to make sure of something. Once he does honey, and she picks up on her dead husband,
Super. He is
he
picking
has
up.
the second
He's
husband.
picking up. The brother is picking up on the dead, on his dead brother. Suba, and from
And
that
to
point.
give her money if she dumps
And if she decides afterwards that she wants a divorce,
He'd have to fulfill the super.
exactly,
of the
exactly,
husband, of the dead husband.
right, of his dead brother, right,
She wants to clarify.
right, okay,
But if she decides she wants to divorce, it makes no difference.
They can't. The women don't have that option.
right, okay. So that's why it says Yabama tochiach shenikneit b'bia ve'ina nikneit b'kas. Mali Yabama shekain ein nikneit b'shtar. Here's your point, Sid. Okay,
There's no
that
contract.
the Yabama is not acquired through a document. Okay, Tomar bezo shenikneit b'shtar. Are you going to say that this one is acquired through a
Which is
document?
a little girl.
Okay, namely the Amma, Talmud Lomar. Our text teaches ki ikach ish. Okay, that the man takes. Right? Ha lamali kara. Why then do I have the pasuk? Okay, ha atya la. Right, because he then comes after her. Amar Rav Ashi, says Rav Ashi mishum de ikala meimar. Why? He says because it's a meikara de dina pircha. Why? Because this kind of kal v'chomer can be easily broken. That's how I'm going to explain. Mehacha, okay, ka ma'ititla. Of what? From where are you going to say that it's going to bring it there? Me'amah ha'ivriya, from the example of Amah ivriya. Ma la'amah ha'ivriya shekain yotzeh b'kasef. The same way that the young servant girl can go out based on money, right? Because we said, remember, there were three options: marry the master, marry the son, or give her freedom. All right, she's able to, or in other words, she can get enough money to buy her freedom. That's the part of the point. Okay.
In other words, if she gets chalitza, she still can't get money.
What? We're not talking about
Right.
it.
That's a separate issue.
You understand what I'm
If
saying?
she gets chalitza, she gets no money.
So what
If
about
she
the
gets
other-
chalitza, she gets the
Oh,
ksuba
she gets
from
the only the
husband.
ksuba from the first husband.
That's the point.
That's
So
the
she does collect everything.
Right, right.
Any
Okay.
widow does.
Right. All right. So yotza b'kasef, tomar bezo she'ena yotza b'kasef. Shall we say this one goes out without any money? Talmud lomar, says the text, ki ikach ish, that the man takes. V'itztarich lemichtav, but it was necessary to write v'yatzah chinam,
She
goes out
without
free.
money.
Why did we say that? Why was it necessary for the Torah to spell out that she goes out without money? V'itztarich lemichtav, and it was also necessary to spell out ki kach ish, that we say the man takes. Why? De'i katav rachmana ki kach, Because if the Torah had only written that the man takes the wife, Hava Amina Kiddushin, right? I would have talked in regards to the betrothal, the Yahav La Baal Didahav, that when the right when he presents the to her, it goes to her, belongs to her. Therefore, Katav Rachmana Vietz Achinam.
That her father gets.
Okay, that she father gets the money, and that's why she goes out in that case without money. Ve'ikatav Rachmana Vietz Achinam, and had the Torah only spoken and said she goes out without any Hava Amina, I would have said there, Heichadia Hava Le, when they give it to him, Ihi Ledidei, right? She belongs to him. V'kidashto Havu Kiddushin.
That maybe you could switch it and she could pay
She-
him and become
Well,
married.
I'm going to phrase it a little differently, but that's the impact. Okay, namely, we might have said as follows: the Yahavale, she would give to him, Ihi, she, Ledidei, to him, V'kidashto,
And it
she
would
would
be a
say to
valid
him,
match.
Ani Mekudeshet Lecha. That's what she would have to say. Okay? And that would be a valid Kiddushin.
That's a
Kata-
Hava mean.
Okay? Katav Rachmana. Nevertheless, that's why that we need the second pasuk that the Torah says, Ki yikach, that he takes velo ki tikach, and not that she
is
takes. Okay? Uba'ala. Okay, and then we say, what about our next example? Uba'ala, right? Milamed shiknikneit babiyah. It comes to tell us that he acquires her through bia. V'lo dinhu. Can't we say that we can learn this automatically on a kal v'chomer too?
Vayibama.
All right, namely, uma yibama she'ein nikneit b'kesef nikneit b'bia. Whereas yibama is not acquired through kesef, but is acquired through bia, right? Zo shenikneit b'kesef. One who can be acquired through kesef, no din shenikneit b'bia. Is it not logical then that she should be able to be acquired through relations? Amaha ivriya tochiach. No, says the Gemara. The Ama ivriya, the young servant girl, is proof that that kal v'chomer doesn't work. Namely, shenikneit b'kasef. She is able to be acquired through money, but I'm going to read here, ve'ein nikneit b'bia. But in no way is she able to be acquired through relations. Mala amah ivriya she'ein kinyana l'shum ishur. Whereas the maid servant, okay, is not
Initially, it's just
okay,
it's just
it's-
a commercial
is
transaction.
not
She's
acquired
not
at
married.
all necessarily for
For
the purpose of marriage.
So it's
Tomar
totally
bezo. Are you going to say with this one, shekinyana l'shum ishut, that this one is primarily acquired for marriage? Talmud lomar uba'ala. That's why the text tells us, and he must have relations with her. V'lama likra, and why then do we have the pasuk? Ha achila, it comes to bring him to her. Amar Rav Ashi, says Rav Ashi mishum de ikala meima. Why? Because Rav Ashi says it comes to tell us meikara de dina pircha. Again, that originally this kind of kal v'chomer is broken, can be broken. Mehecha kamataitla. On what basis can you bring it to her? Miyabama, from the example of Yabama. Mali Yabama shekain zikuka v'omeret. But I can argue there that whereas we're talking about a Yabama, there is already existing some kind level of relationship there, some kind of bond with it. V'omeret, and she's simply waiting for that bond to be
maximized.
okay. That would be one way of phrasing it. Culminated, I was going to say. Okay, Tomar Bezo, are you going to say with regards to the Ama Ivriya, she'ein zukukav omedet. There is no bond relationship exist advan, right? Talmud Lomar, the text tells us, Uba'ala. And therefore, that's why the text comes to tell us, and he has relations with her. And we'll stop right there. Okay,
Say Schlema Shalom.
okay, thank you. Thank you.
Well, not everything good. Enough not so good that you come back.